Welcome back to the Rob and Savage podcast. Got another special guest here, y'all. Big time, Miss Karen Goodwin.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, Rob.
I appreciate it. Well, man, look, I followed you on the ground. I see you have a major following. People trust your word. So I'm gonna give you a platform here, let everybody know who you are. So, who is Karen Goodwin?
So I would say it's whoever I want to be. That's
Okay.
the simple answer. And I know
Okay.
that that's not something that most people are accustomed to. We become like our profession, we're all these things, but it simply is whatever I want to be, whatever I
Okay.
put my mind to. So I just feel like I'm a manifestor of anything that I want to achieve.
Okay.
And when I declare it, that's what it is.
That's what it is. Okay. Hey, she came off the boat with it. I like that. Okay, so let's get into your career a little bit. So what got you into real estate?
At the time, I had a back injury. So I was a nurse in a
Okay.
previous life,
Okay.
and I was unhireable.
What you mean unhireable?
In a sense, I was a liability to any
Okay.
company. I was in physical therapy 3 times a week. When I was looking for a job that was a little bit lower pay scale, something easy, flexible. I was too, like my resume, it wasn't designed for a person who had gone to college, who was a professional. I was just trying to do something simple, make money. No one would hire me. And I had too many medical needs at that time. So
Okay.
I had friends that were real estate investors.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, why not try that? I
Right.
liked their lifestyle, what they were doing. It was flexible. And so
And don't
I
hurt
gave it a
being in
shot.
Nashville too, so you know.
Right. At the time, I was actually in Maryland
Oh wow, okay.
when that
Okay.
happened. And so then I just took on becoming a real estate agent, taking classes to be an investor. And while I was doing, I just started looking at the retail side, and I just took off with real estate. And it kind of really changed my life and my mindset at that point.
Okay. I mean, how was the Baltimore market or Maryland?
At the time, it was better than here,
Oh wow, okay.
right? So it was really cheap to live here in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
In the South, the cost of living, quote unquote, up north. Maryland's still the South,
Right.
right? But from
It's
down
kinda
here,
hard
it's
to-
like
it's the truth.
it's still the
though, yeah.
North, right?
Right.
So it was profitable, but I didn't understand necessarily what those numbers were when I first started. For me, it was
Okay.
just finding myself,
Okay.
right? Like having had a plan in life and being completely derailed by having a injury
Mm-hmm.
on the job. I had to figure out everything. And so coming from a profession where, I clock in, I do what I'm supposed to do, to being an entrepreneur, it was a huge mental jump,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then being female. So at the time I
Right.
was married, it was like my ex-husband had explained to me, he was like, with women, y'all are so used to getting what you want. And he was like, you have to learn to get used to being rejected.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it was shifting into having that grind of getting so many no's,
Mm-hmm.
and then dealing with figuring out who I am and getting my body to work again. Because at the time I wasn't even able to walk.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like constantly like in wheelchairs, crutches, on a cane. I'm in my 20s.
Right.
And it was ridiculous. And I wasn't functioning properly. So when I got into real estate, I had no clue about being an entrepreneur. I had no clue about the market, how it worked, the grind every day in the hustle,
Right.
the money structure. I was just trying to be okay. That was my mindset.
Right.
And trying to go from being what I thought was an independent woman,
Mm-hmm.
right, to now relying on my ex-husband to survive,
Right.
to like getting back to just being Karen again.
I got you. You feel like you lost yourself in a sense.
I did.
Mm-hmm.
I did. I didn't understand at that time grief. Grieving a career that I had created that I wanted for myself. Grieving the fact that my body didn't work. Grieving. I had thoughts where I was just, as a woman, I'm insufficient.
Mm-hmm.
It was like all of these thoughts that I was grieving at one time. So it was a really difficult time to transition. So being this person, no matter what I thought I would do, to no matter what I was thinking wasn't working.
Right. I got you.
And it took a toll.
I got you. And that is a big transition from the medical field into real estate, because now, not saying you weren't a people person at that time, but as we both know, you got to network when it comes to real estate. You got to talk.
You do. And I wasn't a people person. I was very introverted.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't like talking to people.
Yeah,
and then I would have said that I didn't like people, which was actually not true.
I got you.
What I was afraid that people would leave.
I got you.
And so I had subconscious issues.
Yeah.
They were keeping me from connecting.
The fear of rejection, it can touch a lot of different angles. Like sometimes we always put it in a relationship, but it comes to business too. Like people be scared to get into entrepreneurship because of the rejection part, or I don't want to seem like a fool out here. How they going to look down on me, especially if you're not on the higher level that you want to be at that moment. It can affect how you speak to people. Mm-hmm. So I understand that. I'm going to segue to something here. So let's go back before Maryland, before even knowing you're going to be a nurse or in the doctor's field. How was your childhood? Let's get into that.
Childhood. So that was interesting. A lot of my context, right? We know a lot of the belief systems start really, really young. Mm-hmm. I wasn't raised by either parent.
Okay.
So I started off, my mom left when I was like 4. My dad left when I was 9. I was raised by my aunt.
Okay.
So I had an inability to connect. And then I was a military brat. So then we were moving too.
Oh, wow. Okay,
so on top of mom not being there, dad moving around, it was very, very unstable.
I got
and so I was very disconnected from myself, from people. Mm-hmm. And, but my context was to do well. So my dad taught me that education was very important.
Correct.
And to do well, and he gave me 2 career options. He said, become a doctor or a lawyer.
Okay.
I discovered that I was a terrible liar.
The lawyer thing was gone.
Right. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll become a doctor, right? Because I didn't know any better.
Right.
And so I was very adamant about not losing any more people. So I was like, let me be that good child. So I was very quiet. I stayed in my books. I thought that was my access to keeping people from leaving.
Okay.
And being loved.
Okay.
So I was a goody 2-shoes that did nothing but go to school.
Right.
But I grew up it was very, very unstable. My dad didn't know how to raise a little girl.
Okay.
And so he had to let me go so he could get his life together.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually he came back around. But at that point I was very detached. I didn't want to hurt again.
I guess.
So my aunt provided that stability for me, even though I was really kind of disconnected from everybody.
Okay. I kind of, I'm going to say I have a similar story. My father, he went through a divorce in his first marriage, and he actually became the sole provider for my 2 older siblings. They lived with him, and I've talked to him about the whole situation of having to raise a daughter. You know, my brother was there too, but that was like a real new world for him because it was all on him. And, you know, he's old school too, so that was like a hard transition just to be raising a daughter and a son, but not knowing how to do their hair, all that stuff. You know, and then also still trying to date even before he met my mom. So I can see how that was an issue for your dad, even though he stepped away and then came back. But by that time you come back, you're a different person now too, and you start learning your own self, and that probably was a little hard transition. So I get it, I get that. You might ask him. So. What's your nationality?
Korean and Black.
Korean and Black. Okay. His father, he's
Black.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's even more of a dynamic in itself. Now, was you this whole time you were in Nashville, or are you in Maryland?
Oh no. So I grew up in Nashville.
Okay.
So my first memories, we lived in Texas. We moved here. Or I moved to Nashville when I was 6.
Okay.
Going back and unpacking that, nothing was ever safe. I don't even know who I lived with. I was living with strangers. It wasn't even family, right? So that's how crazy it was. And I had to do all this work to kind of heal from all of that.
Okay.
But yeah, my dad was in the military. He dropped me off here. Eventually he caught up with me. He finished all that stuff, came to Nashville. We were hopping from house to house to house because I don't know. I really don't remember, and I don't know what he was going through or what he was thinking. For me, it was just, I just want to be with my dad because that's all I knew.
Yeah.
Right.
What's up?
And then eventually at the age of 9, he realized he couldn't keep moving from house to house to house.
Yeah, you gotta be stable.
Right.
Yeah.
So then I had to pick a place to go.
I got you.
Either my grandfather or my aunt. And I stayed with my grandfather for a little bit, and then I ended up moving with my aunt
Okay.
at the age of like right before I turned 9.
Okay. No, I mean that's deep. Even myself as a father, like the number one thing I want to make sure he has is stability. So I understand how your dad got to that point where, look, I'm getting tired of putting her through this. Let me go on and put my foot down and make sure things are straight in Nashville and go from there. And it hits home because like me being a father now, like wow, like things I had to put a lot of things him in front of all those things. I might want to go vacate. I might want to just do some things with my homies. I can't because I got responsibility. So I feel that. So how did going into high school? How did that transition for you? Like now you're starting to become a young lady, and being mixed. How was that whole transition getting into high school?
Growing up being biracial, I had a lot of identity issues, right? Mm-hmm. So I didn't know my Korean side at all.
Okay.
So I was raised on the Black side. And so I identified as Black, right? You want to belong somewhere.
Right, period.
So my family, everyone's Black. So then I go to school, I'm Black, right? And then people are looking at me like, no, you're not.
Right.
You are Chinese and you're this. And so I was bullied a lot. And so I had to eventually at some point accept that I look different and I am different and I'm the other box. You know, when you had to pick Black, white, and other. And I was like, dang, I'm other.
I got you.
And then eventually it was like multiracial.
Oh, right. They eventually did put it, yeah.
And then it's confusing because no matter where you go, when I start talking, they're like, you're Black.
Right.
No matter what I put.
Right, you know? Real. Especially society, yeah.
So I was bullied a lot. And then eventually they made a decision to put me in magnet school. So I ended up going to Martin Luther King to get away from being bullied.
I got you.
And then being in that environment, it was a lot safer. And then it was very diverse because all the schools that I went to before were primarily Black.
Okay.
Right. But I didn't understand that when I was being bullied, it was just the boys liked me. You know, I couldn't understand it. You know, like they pull your hair and it's like, that means they like you. I'm like, I didn't believe that. Right. I was like, they pushed me down and that means they like me. Like that's crazy.
Right.
So that was the bullying. Right. And then, of course, when you get into high school, you have different types of drama and you have your cliques and your circles and who you fit and belong with. And I was always the person that just kind of fit like in the middle. Like I wasn't with the popular and I wasn't with, I don't know. I could kind of rotate, but I was in this like little group that was just like, I don't know, the average student, I guess.
I got you.
I just kind of blended in. And I think I wanted to blend in because I didn't want the attention.
Right. And that's a safe place for you too. Now you finally feel like, okay, I'm not just a focal point. Like you said, going to, and I'm going to dive into myself a little bit. Of course, now I'm not biracial, but I'm very high yellow. So I went to all Black schools my whole life, except for my first 2 years in junior college in Arizona. So I'm getting bullied my whole life, except for like the last 2 years of high school. And I'm getting bullied amongst my male peers. Because they look at you light skin, they think you're weaker. Even the women might think you're a pretty boy, all this stuff. So it's like, man, like where do I fit in this niche? And I joke about this, but it's really the truth. I'm gonna say this on air. Things didn't change for me. Like I just said about your safe place. My safe place didn't come until I got to high school when Pretty Ricky and B2K and B5 was out. Because now you're seeing light-skinned people or boys on TV screen and women are liking them.
Okay.
I always joke about it, like, light-skinned males had their time in the 80s, and then the 90s came more the dark-skinned men, like the Tyrese and Tupacs. The 2000s came, we kind of had our chance again. So I was like, I felt comfortable then. But when I got to college, everything got different because now, my first 2 years in college in Arizona, I was in a situation where I was a minority now. My whole class was white. And that's my first time actually being in a classroom full of white people. Like I didn't know how to communicate with them, ask for help on the test, none of that. And that was an interesting experience for me, but I needed that so I can learn on my social skills. Then when I transferred to TSU to play football, I'm back home with my people now. But now I got confidence. I've been out to a whole nother side of the United States. Yes, I still was hearing the little light skin jokes, but it wouldn't faze me as much then because now I'm grown. I'm into my grown man body, and so it was just different. So I can relate to you, especially when you said how the picking was happening until you get into your little safe zone. And now since we're grown now, they don't even really care about race. It's just if you handsome or cute, you're good.
Right. Now I'm Black. It's funny. The moment I just wasn't trying to be that or trying to be something different, then I became accepted.
That quick.
It doesn't even matter what I am.
Don't even matter, right.
I'm just human.
Right. Don't even matter no more, man. Transformational coach. I like that whole term. Like, explain that.
Yeah, so in 2016, right before I separated from my husband, I took a course. It's called the Landmark Forum, and they study what it is to be a human being.
Okay.
And transformational coaching is the focus of the being portion of being human. So instead of focusing on like what we do, which you see a lot of coaches tell you, or like how to live your life, it's like, who do you want to be?
Okay.
And when you become a certain way, you're being a certain way, it transforms every area of life.
Okay.
So if people come to me and they say, hey, I don't communicate well in relationships, or my relationship with my mom is not great, I can transform who you're being with your mom. A lot of times we don't understand like the muscle memory of how we just get triggered and we go back into the past. Right. So that transformational coaching focuses on first identifying those blind spots. Okay. So that you can do something about what you cannot see. Right. So what you know it, now you can change it. Okay. But then you can also identify who you've been being the entire time. And a lot of times we end up being victims to our circumstances. So if I weren't being a victim, who could I be? Okay. Right. Okay. And so then by channeling being something different, whether it's like being courageous in this conversation with my mom, and if I've had those moments myself, or being brave, or being assertive, right? Before I walk into something, I declare who I'm going to be. And when I declare who I'm going to be, then that's what does the speaking, that being. And then when you transform this, you end up having confidence that transforms in every area of life, because you're only one person. And a lot of people like to compartmentalize. They like to think, I'm this way with family, I'm this way with friends, I'm this way at work. And the reality is that being transfers across all of them. So if I can transform this, I've transformed all of it. Right. Because you're going to show up differently. Correct. In every area of life. So that's the power of transformational coaching, because I'm not going to tell you what to do. Okay. I want you to identify who you've been being. Okay. And you start to observe and take accountability for self. I like that. All you're focused on self. I don't care what anyone else says. And people they start complaining. Right. They did this, they did this, they did this. Okay. So what? Right. What did you do? Right. And we hardly ever. Self-accountability. Right. We never shine the light on ourselves. Yeah. And that was hard when I was being coached. I got you. And when I looked at it, I was like, oh, this is Angel. Let me tell it. Right. And I was like, oh, I've been a jerk. Right. I've been a brat. Yeah. I've been a whole bunch of things. I had a lot of apologizing to do. The man in the mirror. Yeah. Man, that's great. So, wow. So is there a difference between that and life coach? Or is it in the same realm? It's in the same realm. It just depends on what the focus is. Okay. Right? So transformation coaching focuses on being. Okay. There are lots of different types of coaching, but what they focus on to cause change in life is different. Okay. So I'm never going to tell you what to do. I guess. I'm just going to have you focus on who you're going to be. Okay. If you ever heard the term be, do, have. Okay. Yeah, I have. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And most people, when they ask me, they're like, what do? I don't know what to do. Right. No. It's who do you have to be? Mm-hmm. It's not a do, have, be, because that's most people think. They think, like, if I do all these things, I'll be a millionaire. Right? No, you need to be and have the mindset of a millionaire. Now you'll have the results of a millionaire. I agree with that fully. Right? I agree with that fully. Like, there's a young lady in here right now who told me something about how to focus on the podcast. She said, you need to create the narrative. And when she said that, I was like, you're right. It's not necessarily just trying to have your own lane, but you need to don't go off of what has already been out there. Do what you want to do and they'll follow. Yeah. So I like that. Yeah. Your own self-expression. Correct. Seeing what the needs are and the value. Mm-hmm. Getting the fact that you are a contribution to society. Right. Right. And then being okay with shining out there. Right. And then allowing the people see that. Right. Right. So when people come into my world, like they don't understand it. And then when I introduce them to the community of people that I've been involved with, it's like, it's just different. You feel good about who you are. You feel good about being human. We make being human wrong.
Right.
We look at the world in a dichotomy, right, wrong, good, bad, all these different things, instead of just going, that's just life. That's just what it is. Like, there's no playbook to say, when this is what you do every single day, this is how you have to be, this is how life works, because it doesn't work the same way for everybody. We all have different experiences, past, context, views, all of that. And if you could just be okay with how you are, the way that you are, not saying you have to stay there,
Right.
but the moment you're making something wrong, what are you trying to do? You try to fix it, avoid it, cover it up, instead of just moving on. You can't actually build upon that.
I think that's why a lot of people need that type of coaching, because the world we in with social media, it's really got people who want to live a certain facade, and they're not happy if they're not meeting what they're seeing on social media. They could be having everything that's the right way, but they'll see somebody on social media that's doing it a little differently, a little flashy, not knowing they probably live in a shack somewhere, but it looks better to them. So they're trying to compromise their own self to look like that, and it's putting us all down a rabbit hole. How has it been for people to reach out to you in transformation coach? Like, is Nashville a good market with that, or are you international with it? Because I know you have a big following.
I scaled back. What I realized is that the people that were following me didn't have the foundation.
Okay.
Right? It is a context, it's an idea. If you're not reading books, if you're not coming from an industry that has you go through trainings to self-evaluate, do introspection, to think different, they weren't doing well. Okay. So I had to step back to say, okay, what would I need to create for them to succeed? Because I'm not in the business of taking people's money.
Okay.
But what I realized is that we are so focused on looking good and being right. And I cannot coach anyone who is too busy trying to impress me.
I got you.
I'm already impressed by who you are.
Okay.
So there's nothing that you have to do. Just be yourself.
Right.
And then it's like, let's get to the nitty gritty of it. But when you do that, you also have to create safety, right? So when you're thinking about people coming and watching your podcast and you're doing your thing and then they're just attracted to you, it's like people have to get that, like, it's okay to be just who they are. So I had to create the safe space for them to open up and not feel judged or not feel shame.
Okay.
Because the moment you start to feel those feelings and you really want to be liked, you cover everything up. So now you're not being honest with me.
You ain't being honest. Right.
But the crazy part is a lot of times we're not being honest with ourselves. So when I think about my journey, and this is like a 7-year journey, I wasn't honest with myself. So I had to be compassionate for where people are. And I had to step back and say, okay, what can I create that has them kind of see and hear a different way of looking at life? And that's challenging because then you bump up against ego, and everyone has a different filter, right? So if you hear people look through life through rose-colored glasses, and then we have layers of different types of glasses.
Right.
But there's certain threads that follow us throughout life. And having to identify that in so many different people, what that is the tricky part.
Okay.
So when I looked at the coaching program I took, it was amazing that this leader, and they took, I don't know how many hours of training to do it, that they could dance with people's egos, quiet it down, everyone else gets something out of it, and then eventually people will catch up, or they wouldn't.
Okay.
But that's the hard part of coaching, because I don't know.
Okay.
It's a discovery. And so people are always looking for you to tell them what to do. I'm learning you. And I got to bump up against you, and I got to learn how to calm you down, how to be direct and drop something on you that, like, I tell people, it's like, I'm here to piss you off.
Right.
Because if you're not pissed off, then what are we doing here?
Right.
And it's not because I'm trying to attack you. It's because you're going to start to see parts of you that you deem as undesirable.
Right.
And when you start to really focus on you like that, because the first thing we do, we try to cover it up, we go distract, we do other things. But if you can get mad about it and then say, hey, this is not who I am. I choose to be something different. I choose to have something different. And then you can cause change. But some people don't like that feeling of distress. When you talk about growth, coaching, therapy, all those things, they're uncomfortable spaces.
Yeah, it's like marriage counseling. Like you're gonna have to reveal some things that, put on the table in front of your spouse about, look, I did this, or I didn't like when you did this. You have to make yourself uncomfortable so you can get past that and get it behind you. So I get it. I get that big time. Is the ego one of the biggest things that's when people come to you, is that the biggest thing you have to break for a lot of people? Or just get them to listen?
I want to say it's ego.
Okay.
Sometimes you can't listen and hear. Listening is a little different, right? So being able to listen, you also have to feel heard.
Okay.
And I feel like a majority of people don't feel heard at all. We're like deprived. It's like when I don't know if you've ever met a person, they start talking and they keep going in circles, and then you meet them again, they're still talking about the same thing. And it's usually because they haven't felt heard or seen. And they're just waiting for someone to see them. So you actually can't even get to the listening of them until they feel heard. Now, you have two people who are now, let's say you have a tough conversation, something comes up, maybe it's marriage counseling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, two people arguing to feel heard. Someone has to give up. So someone has to be like, I'm going to not let my ego run the show. I am going to step back for 2 seconds to see what you have to say and meet you where you are.
Correct.
And then once you feel safe and secure, and that's like a human need for everybody. Once they feel safe and secure and they don't feel attacked and have to protect themselves, then they can open up, and then you can have your needs met eventually. But Absolutely. It takes someone really kind of saying, you know what, I'm not going to push back. I don't have a reason to. Let me fall back and hear you.
Right.
And that's tough for everybody.
I'm so glad you said that. I don't want to get on the racial lines, but I will say in the black man, black woman relationship scenario, I think that what's hurting us more than any other race, of course I can't speak on all races because I'm not involved in that stuff, but in the black man, black woman, the ego trip is the biggest thing. And nobody wants to fall back. They need to be heard. I got to be heard. And even though I can speak on the man side, some men right now, especially in the black community, just feel like they're not heard. They got to suppress a lot of things. And if they do speak, they're too mouthy or they look less upon. So a lot of stuff has been balled up. But on the female side, I know a lot of women feel like they're not heard in their own relationship too. Mm-hmm. So it's something that we as a whole have to fix and come down to, like I said, just breaking down those barriers with egos and just somebody being humble enough to just like, you know what, let me take a back seat. Yeah, I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that. But nobody wants to admit it.
Right. I think, that's the tough part. You don't want to appear weak, or you're afraid your needs won't get met.
Right. It could be off a past hurt. It could have been traumatized from the past relationship. I wasn't hurt. They got this wall up. Yeah.
I think a lot of it all comes from childhood. Most people don't want to believe that, right? I have so many people that say, oh, you're this way because it was a relationship. Like, no, I'm this way because my dad did this when I was 4 years old. Right. And that relationship with my dad and my mom has been in all of my relationships. And so when I was like sitting in with my therapist and they were like, so what does this remind you of? And I was like, my mama. I was like, damn, I was dating my mom. Oh, I was dating my daddy. Right. And I had to go back and resolve those issues to be okay to be in a relationship, to break the cycle, because all we're trying to do is fix the past. And if all I'm trying to do is find someone so I can resolve my daddy issues, I'm actually not probably in a dynamic that's actually healthy to begin with anyways.
Right.
So I'm picking the wrong partner.
I'm still chasing my past.
Yeah, I'm picking you for the wrong reasons, but I don't even know I'm picking you for those reasons.
Right. You being a Band-Aid to a reason that I have, and I'm not even catering to you.
So I was like, if I can fix this with you, obviously, oh my God, then I could have changed how it was for me growing up. Mm-hmm. And that's not the case.
Not the case at all.
The other thing that is missing with men and women is that we're different. Mm-hmm. Our brains are designed different. We communicate different. Our needs are different. At the end of the day, we all want the same thing.
Right.
But we value different things at different levels and at different points in time. And so we don't know, we're always scrambling to get our needs met instead of being able to talk about our needs. That's a very vulnerable conversation to have.
It is.
And vulnerability, I don't know about everyone else, but that was scary when I had to learn to do that. I remember my coaches talking to me about that, and I was just like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not sharing that. I'm not saying it. I was difficult. My ego was like, we're not doing that. They're like, Karen, I'm standing for you to have this, this, and this. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about right now.
Right.
I'm not listening to you.
I got you.
I heard everything they said. But that was my ego, and I had to actually be responsible for that. Not necessarily change who I am. I can't control that.
Right.
But say, hey, when I'm confronted with something and I don't like it, I'm going to push back. I'm hearing you, but it doesn't look like it.
I got you.
And it's going to look like I'm being really tough on you, and it's not personal. So please forgive me. So I have to do it up front, right? So that's the responsibility part. It's not about changing.
Mm.
And so that's what people think. They're like, you got to be like holier than thou and become Jesus.
Mm.
It's like, no, accept your humanity. And can someone, whoever you're with, your friends, your family, your significant other, can they have the graciousness for your humanity and forgive you in those times when you didn't know better?
I got you.
I didn't know better. I did all these things. I had no idea the impact. Most people don't get the impact of their actions. Change comes from impact. If I say I want this and I'm in my own way, I have to get how I'm in my own way. I have to get how everything around me is impacted by what I'm doing.
Right.
And then I'm like, and then how am I impacted?
Right.
And when you get that, you're like, so for me to not be responsible or me to hide this vulnerability or for me to look strong, right? But what it's keeping me away from is like love and affinity, peace, connection, belonging. Also, I could hide this and save face.
Okay.
And avoid being responsible that I hurt you. I don't want to deal with your emotions.
I'm
going to shut that off, right? But I'm not even dealing with my own emotions. So for me to even deal with yours, I have to deal with mine. And so that's that grace part. Because some people take it personal. It's not. If I'm not giving you that, guess who else I'm not giving it to? Myself. I can't even stop the pause to look at that.
Right.
So that's what we have to come to accept. And that's what my coaching is focused on. It's like, can you accept that you're human? Can you accept that you did something, you didn't know the consequences of it, you thought it was fun, you thought it was whatever, but you hurt all these people along the way. Can't change the past.
Can't change the past, but yeah, you left a trail here.
Yeah. Right. I can ask for forgiveness. They may or may not. I can change the narrative. I can show up differently. People's listening has to catch up to who I am now. And they will either want me in their life or they won't. And I have to deal with that. And that's okay. And then I get to transform who I'm being moving forward so that I can actually have all the things I want and not leave a trail of bodies behind me.
Right.
And what I mean by that is like hurt people or people I don't talk to anymore. Or like I'm just thrown away because I didn't want to be responsible or have a tough conversation to own it.
Right.
And so by owning it gives you freedom. By owning it gives them freedom. And I don't think people really get that because for me, when I was sitting in that course, my father was deceased. He passed away when I was in college. And I had all this guilt and resentment. Who was I going to talk to? I couldn't call him.
Right.
And I had to learn to let that go. And I had to learn that a conversation that he and I had that I was 14, that I didn't know any better at 14, would change. It kept me and my dad apart. And I couldn't fix it. And that's when I learned the value of people and relationships. There is nothing in this world that's not fixable. And my relationship and your life is more valuable than any materialistic thing out here.
Right. Not real.
So if I can give up like being right, looking good, and get that we just kind of fell out for whatever reason. I hurt your feelings. I didn't understand what was important to you. And have that conversation and I can change it. So I'm always willing to, when it kind of calms down, to come back to the table, have the conversation, to say, you know, how did that impact you? Because that's what it is the impact.
Right.
We're bickering over unmet needs.
Unmet needs. Wow. So I'll say this. Does your spirituality be involved in your coaching?
It is. I think that's a touchy subject because you have to understand where people are coming from with that and what their relationship is to spirituality. But for me, when I look at coaching, I've done so much stuff that all of that comes out, like different ways of kind of looking at things. Like, you know, I flew to Costa Rica to do ayahuasca, to tap into subconscious thoughts and patterns, to heal, prayer, meditation, like all of those things work. And I do believe like universe, God, whatever you want to call it, talks to you. Okay. And I see and hear things in a way that when I wasn't open, I couldn't hear and see. And through coaching and through separation, divorce, through all these things, like I felt like God was trying to talk to me and I wasn't listening.
Hey.
And then eventually, I could hear him. So like, I was estranged. I like left church. I don't know. At some point in time when I was like probably like 14. I was a teenager. I didn't believe anything the church said. And I kind of moved away from God, church, all of that. And then only to go through all of that to then discover that, I'm like, God is real.
Right. I think we all quietly go through that in a sense. I had a bit of that, I say, when I was coming out of high school, but then I snapped back into it just when God delivered me from a lot of things I was going through when I was in Arizona with some roommates of mine, and also the way I was living at the time. And it brought me back home to my knowing. I'm gonna say this: what advice you have for the audience here who are trying to reach out to somebody for counseling or coaching? How can they find you? And also, what's a safe place for them to reach out to you or anybody else when it comes to what they feel like they're battling in their life?
What I would say, well, seeking help. So first is acknowledging that you want and need help, right? Okay. And I think that you have to find out who you connect with and you feel safe, okay, right? So ask questions, interview, see if they can help you with what you're looking for. But the one thing you have to realize it's not going to be an easy journey. Most people want that easy button.
Right.
And you have to find that person where you feel safe, but they push your buttons a little bit, but you feel heard and you feel loved. And that's one of the things I had to strive really hard because I wasn't very loving or nurturing.
Gotcha.
And I had to create, because I was very direct and to the point. I don't know. I like to be efficient, and that doesn't work with people. I had to learn to be direct, but also that love come through. So behind that, in the being, it's like I'm being loving, but I'm being direct and straight. And people hate it and people love it. So if you talk to anyone I've ever coached, they'll be like, Karen, I hate it when you said this, but I knew you said it because you cared about me. Right? So I think that that's what you have to make sure that you feel with whoever you're with, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a coach, because sometimes when you're bumping up against it, you have to have a person that knows how to fall back, right? And it's the same thing if you're like married or siblings or whatever relationship you have. It's like, can I push you a little bit? And do I know when to fall back and give space for what's showing up here? Because this is a hard journey.
Oh, yeah. And to piggyback off that, I'm learning that even with my sibling, my little brother. Like, we bump heads. I love him to death. But our views are just different. You know what I'm saying? We live two different lifestyles, too. So it's like, we crash. But like me being the older brother, I've learned now, just pull back. You know what I'm saying? Your love for your brother is more work you getting your point out. So, it took time. It took growth for me to get there. I'm 34 now, so it took time to get that point. But I'm here now, and Joseph, you heard that on camera. I just said that. Look, Karen, I'm glad you came out. This is powerful. This is powerful. How can the audience find you? What's your social media?
Well, you can find me on IG. So that's pretty much primarily the platform that I am on. Okay. I'm exploring other platforms, but I haven't figured out how I want to do that yet. Okay. So you can find me on Instagram as defining.karen. And I guess that'll be my handle forever. That's simple. There's a link on there that you can schedule a consultation to speak with me to see if it's a good fit, and we can explore from there.
Okay. All right. Well, look, y'all heard it. Tap into it.